Flounders alongside me, Bob. We got a lot to get to today because Wednesday, if anybody saw our video on YouTube that's already up there, our quick little recap, we had a big day. We talked about 30 players, Penn State players, including a lot of the transfers who we're seeing for the first time, and a handful of the returners too. Tony Rojos, a big one, Quentin Martin Jr., one of them, the running back. There are a handful of big name guys who we talked to. So a ton of stuff to get through. We're going to have a lot on PennLive.com for you to see. But Bob, today we got to kick this episode off of the live Blue White Breakdown talking about a little bit of some breaking news that hit this morning. Yeah. Tight end Andrew Rapier, who is one of those big returners, is a little banged up.
He is. I think On3 had it first, credit to them. But yeah, actually he put it on Instagram.
He did.
If I actually knew how to properly work Instagram, I probably would have got to it a little bit sooner, but I did figure it out. So fourth-year guy, had a great finish to last year. Terry Smith loved him down the stretch. I think that Penn State fans can appreciate rapidly developing tight ends. It's almost like tight end U now, not quite, but yeah, there is a picture on his Instagram page with him in his right foot is in a cast. I don't know where. He's in a big city somewhere. It looked like he was in a penthouse somewhere. His foot was propped up, and he basically said, "Be back soon." On3 reported that the injury is not expected to be serious, which is it's not James Franklin code for long term, but it sure sounds like. Look, I think even the new Iowa State coaches know what they have in Rap, and I think as long as he is ready to go for August practice sessions, and it sounds like he is, that's really all that matters. Although kudos to Iowa State for bringing like their whole Iowa State tight end room with them.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much a lot of those guys are going to work, but there's there's a young tight end, I think Cooper Alexander, with a lot of promise. But they have options at tight end, not named Rapier, and I think Max, as we kind of get used to spring and spring practices, it's real. The veterans, even if they're healthy, they're not going to do much just because of the grind of the season. And a lot of players last year at every major school probably played through some things the final month of the season just because of the toll it takes, especially in the Big Ten. Rap played through some things, and he played some of his best football in his last 3 games. So I think if you're a Penn State fan, you shouldn't really be worried about not having Rapier available, in March and in early April. It's really about having him on the field and as close to 100% as possible in August, because it's a big season for Penn State. It's the first year of the Matt Campbell era, a lot of new coaches, a lot of new faces. And I'm going to tee you up here, Max. It's really a different mindset, it seems like, for the Penn State football program in year one without James Franklin.
Yeah, that's the perfect lead in to kind of the bulk of what we wanted to talk about today, because I'm sure you can agree, but a lot of the conversations we had with players yesterday, and I did mention this on our little quote unquote post game video, but and we've talked about it here and there throughout the off season, but the culture is definitely shifting at Penn State. And I think Matt Campbell has a different approach, not just on the field, where, I do think like his veterans will probably take it easy in the spring. I mean, James Franklin did that too, but I think it's pretty well known at this point. It's come out of a lot of different places that James was pretty hard on guys during the season. They had a very rigid schedule. Everything was micromanaged to the millimeter. He was on top of all of it, and that was difficult for some guys. And I don't think that's going to be the case under Matt Campbell. I think it's already starting to show. I would say Tony Rojos, I mentioned him at the Open, was kind of the most interesting guy for me. And I got some of these ideas from a lot of other guys too, and I followed up on it. But he brought up the idea that the accountability is a lot different this year. And I found that so interesting. And talking to him and a few other guys, they have a setup this season, this offseason so far in winter workouts, where they've taken, they have 8 teams, and they have 2 or 3 guys who they consider they're on their leadership council leading each team. And then they drafted the rest of the roster, young guys, different position groups. So they're working in these small groups to make sure everybody's mingling with different groups that they wouldn't because of all the new faces that are here. They also compete for points weightlifting, going to class, being on time to things. Those are good. Those are good things. If you don't do those things, you're low on points. And if you're low on points, the punishment is you got to come in at 5 a.m. on Wednesday and clean up the entire facility. So I talked to a handful of guys.
Incentivized.
Yeah, I talked to a handful of guys who had to do that already, and it certainly seemed as if it was paying off. Like they did not want to do it again. But it also, I mean, they continued to say it's such a huge piece of how they've brought this team together so quickly. I mean, it's only been a couple months since they've all been on campus, and it's such a diverse group of backgrounds for these guys. But I thought that was really interesting, and Tony was very. I mean, it wasn't just that, but he continued to say the accountability is different. Something we heard Cooper Cousins talk about at the Thon availability, where he said, this coaching staff is more open. We're allowed to go up in the offices more often if we want to. It's a little more personable. Anthony Donko said, it doesn't feel like somebody's breathing down your neck at every turn. There's a lot of time until you get to spring practice, putting pads on a season, but it just seems like the culture is a lot different. It's a lot more family focused isn't the right word, but there's more accountability, and there's more, the vibes are just higher. I feel like, guys seem happier. They're also doing a lot more work in the community. Tony again was one of them who said, I didn't really do much of that in the past, but Matt Campbell has worked on all of us to try and do more of that. There's just a lot going on that I think is a little bit of a difference, and I think it's positive difference. And I got the vibe from every guy we talked to that they're enjoying it so far.
Yeah, Max, I'm just going to say it. James Franklin's last season at Penn State only lasted 6 games. The reason it lasted only 6 games is they played a fluffy non-conference schedule, won 3 games, didn't look great doing it, and then they started 0-3 in the Big Ten. Big losers to heavy underdogs, UCLA, and then Northwestern at home. They were wound too tight. That's what it was. James talked at Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas last July about embracing expectations. It's clear to me they did not embrace the expectations.
Yeah.
The expectations were too much for the Penn State program, too much for James. And I don't think they could ever overcome the pressure that went with being arguably the team to beat going into the season. Every coach is different in terms of handling that. Some coaches thrive in that environment. I think James could say otherwise, but it's one thing to be viewed as a top 10 team. It's another to be viewed as maybe the number 1 team going into the season. I don't think that he thrived at all in that atmosphere. And I think when you saw them struggle, I guess struggle is not the right word. When you saw them just be uneven against teams in non-conference play they should have just had their way with, I think the intensity ratcheted up. I think he got way, way too keyed up. And I think the more pressure that he put on himself, the more he put on his assistants, and the more they put on the players, it trickled downhill. And they just did not look anything near like the team that participated in the playoffs the year before. And they had a lot of players coming back from that team, and they added some players. And when you hear people talk about it like they're talking about it now, it sounds like a relief, but it also sounds like a change was desperately needed. And for anyone who thinks Pat Kraft was nuts for pulling the plug on James Franklin when he did, was it early? Probably, but it was also deserved.
It was. I think so. I think it's right. I mean, we don't really have to rehash all of it again. We've done it so many times, but yeah. I think everybody's kind of getting on the same page. But the point really is just, like you said, I mean, it was time. The things that happened that led to last season's downfall, they're starting to come to light more and more every day, every time we get to be around this team under Matt Campbell. Yeah. And it just becomes more obvious how much they needed that change and how much of a difference that makes. I think, Zane Durant started to say it at the end of the year. There's a reason why that team hung with national champion Indiana, down to the final second. They started to play more free. They looked like the team that they were supposed to be. Zane Durant said we were reading into our press clippings. We didn't have the accountability, and now we're seeing that it is there. One other point from Tony Rojos that I wanted to hit on, just that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Rapp's injury and maybe the slower timeline on him, taking it easy on all the veterans. Tony, of course, had a lower body injury, put him on crutches, ended his season. Happened during the week of practice following the whiteout last year against Oregon. He told us today for the first time that he had a quad contusion that he suffered in the game against Oregon, played through it. And then the following week of practice, he said, look, I was having pain running. It was difficult to run, but I was told to just keep running and it will get better.
Yeah.
And then we go to practice, to team drills, the first play of team drills, and that's when he had the major injury that cost him his season. So I thought, Tony was saying a lot without saying a lot, and he's a very vocal guy. Of course, he was all over the place, all over the internet with his coaching search thoughts. He's back here. He seems kind of rejuvenated, ready to go for his redshirt junior season. And I just found a lot of what he said interesting, and that especially with the injury, I think is, in some ways a microcosm of the last regime here.
Yeah, Max, don't forget he's also, I would say, an accomplished TikToker. He and Marcus Neal are a nice duo. It was good to see that the Iowa State transfers and the Penn State vets seemed like they hit it off pretty quickly. That was my takeaway from that. They did a couple of them. Also, again, that Oregon game, I remember when Tony got hurt, he took a bad step. I think he was pressuring the quarterback, and the quarterback got away, but he took an awkward step. And then you could see him on the sideline. He might have missed a play or two, but you could tell he was favoring something in his lower half. And then to hear the news that he was told it was probably gonna go away, just keep playing through. And then he immediately in practice aggravated something that prohibited him from playing. That's a tough look, man. I mean, when you say something like that, I think the inference is clear. And it is what it is, but it was supposed to be a championship season. Kudos for him to sucking it up and trying to go against Oregon when he wasn't 100%, but he paid a price. I'm just hopeful. This is what I'm hopeful about with him. I just thought, I talked about them struggling and I talked all that stuff, but when he was on the field on the defensive side, he was playing awfully well, and you saw all of that athleticism kind of at its peak form. He was involved in everything. He was one of the few, I think, people on the defense that actually was pretty comfortable in Jim Knowles' complex scheme. But if we can get back to that version, if Penn State and Penn State's fan base can get back to seeing that version of Tony Rojos early in 2026, and mind you, that he doesn't have to be quite that way, I think, at the start, because the non-conference schedule is a bit kind. But if he looks anything like that guy, I mean, he is one of the best linebackers, not only in the Big Ten, but in college football. I'm hopeful that he is, because he's a special athlete. There's no question about it. A running back, legit. He could have played running back in college. You saw that on an interception return in the playoffs. But I just hope that we see something similar to that, because this is really probably going to be his final year.
Yeah, I mean, if all goes well, there's no reason to believe that he won't be an NFL draft pick next year, because he's that good. He's that good of an athlete. He's kind of the exact mold of what a linebacker is in the modern era of college football, being able to cover the field side to side. And to your point, when he went down, I think so much of Jim Knowles' scheme was based around having these two freaky athletic linebackers who were really good. And when you lose one of them, you can't do the same thing. So it's good to hear that Tony is he's on track. He should be back for the entire summer. He said fall camp, everything. So good news, a lot of runway for him. The same goes for a couple other guys who were also injured and dealing with some stuff. Jeremiah Cooper, talented defensive back. He said he's on track to be back by the season. Yeah. And then you also mentioned it yesterday, but just give you a chance to reiterate it for people who might have missed it, Bob. Rocco Becht also on a good schedule right now, yeah?
Yeah. His and you know what? You could tell Matt Campbell has talked about, the quarterback. It all starts with the quarterback, and that's nothing that is surprising. But the way that his Iowa State teammates talked about him and what he went through last year just to get on the field for a lot of the second half of that season, when you have a labrum tear, left non-throwing shoulder. But I think the more painful thing probably was the sprained AC joint in his throwing shoulder, his right shoulder. He said, it was tough losing streak, then getting ready to play, but he wanted to be there for his team. He wanted them to finish strong. They all spoke of all the things he went through. Then it was really, really tough to play through that, but he did it. His numbers weren't bad. They just weren't quite to the level that they were in 2024, but he also didn't have his 2,000-yard receivers, and that was kind of a big deal. He said, he plans to begin throwing. This is Thursday. He plans to begin throwing a little bit on Saturday, and that's if everything goes well, he's gonna ramp it up, and he hopes to be, by the time the second half of spring, the final 7 or 8 practices, whatever it is, he hopes to be much more involved and be a part of the offense. But hey, man, there's not a lot behind him right now in the quarterback room, and that's kind of the state of college football. They like a lot of those kids, but they need to keep him healthy and hearty going into August. But he was confident, Max, that he's going to be, for the second half of spring practice, he was going to be able to participate. And when the blue-white game rolls around, maybe you'll even see him do some things. But he was really impressive for the 25 or 30 minutes that he had with the media for the first time. He also walked into the way it was set up. He kind of turned the corner, and there were, 5 or 6 cameras, about 20 media guys all around this little room. And I know he never really experienced that at Iowa State, but he handled it. He handled it very well. Just a very, very confident individual. And you can tell that I don't think the moment will ever be too big for Rocco Beck, either on or off the field. And you can interpret that, Penn State fans, any way you like. I know I know what I'm trying to tell you, but this guy is a confident guy. Who he reminded me of was, number one was Trace McSorley, but also, and this is before this is a long time ago, he reminded me an awful lot of Michael Robinson, who led the 05 team. But you got to have some swagger, and you got to have some confidence, and it's got to be real. You can't fake it. He's got it, and I think it's a great sign.
Yeah, he carries himself so well. He's very clearly a veteran. He's among active quarterbacks, he's the one returning this year with the most wins as a starter. He's experienced. He looks the part. I hate to keep putting it's not trying to put that expectation on him, but I agree. Every time I see him do something, every time I see him walk around, he gives me Trace vibes. He's got that moxie that Trace had. Of course, Trace is going to coach him now. You don't want to
testosterone in that room. A lot of testosterone in that QB room. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rocco Beck's really impressive. I'm excited to see him out on the field. Depending on what he does in the blue-white game, if we have to wait until the fall, I think it's going to be a fun year with him. I think he and his offensive coordinator match each other's personalities very well. It should be a lot of fun. They've got an interesting group around them. Bob, we're going to keep rolling along on the live version of the Blue-White Breakdown here. If anybody in the chat has some questions you want to know about, we've got a wealth of information this month between some long availabilities with the assistant coaches and the players. If you got something you want to know, lay it on us. We'll see if we can answer it. But Bob, I'll throw it to you. What are one or two other things that you would say was most interesting from yesterday's avail outside of the things we've already talked about?
It's interesting to just watch especially there were more than just Iowa State kids at that transfers at that availability. There were Penn State returnees, and there were other prominent transfers from other programs we had a chance to talk to. But the new guys, not necessarily the Penn State guys, kind of know what to expect. But just getting the reaction to some of those guys of just coming to State College. I think the Iowa State kids were a little bit more comfortable because Ames, Iowa, and maybe State College. There's probably a lot of similarities, whether it's weather or population or isolation. But there were some kids from bigger schools. I think it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for them. But all of them, I was just struck by. It just seems like very quickly. Whether it's the Penn State kids, the Iowa State kids, or there were some people from the Western defensive lineman, the Colorado edge rusher McPherson, James Peoples, the Ohio State running back. It did feel like to me everyone kind of got on the page fairly quickly. And I think that's a credit to the coaching staff. But the Iowa State players, what struck me the most is I'm really intrigued by the secondary, the safeties from Iowa State that are very, very talented. They have the hybrid player in Jeremiah Cooper, but also the corners that Penn State was able to keep. A lot of them are young, but there's also Aldavian Collins. There's also Zion Tracy. I just think that group, when you combine the safeties that have been brought in and the corners that have stayed, I have to think it's when you talk about just secondary and you talk about Danton Lynn and maybe him really never having that kind of talent to work with on the back end. I know the USC free safety was, I think, a first-team All-American, but I'm talking about corner, safety, and the depth in the room. I am just so intrigued by what Danton is going to do with this group because he's got so many interesting players on the back end that I think this Penn State defense, as long as he can get them playing fast, because that was a problem. Jim Knowles could not do that, even though he had some pretty good talent too. I want to, if this secondary plays fast, I don't know that there's going to be many better secondaries, I think, in college football. And it's not just the guys that Penn State brought back. I think these Iowa State kids and some of the other guys that came in, they were really, really good last year. And I think the spotlight was never really on them because they were in Ames, where it's going to be on them now. And I think they're going to flourish.
I'm with you. I think there are some really strong position groups on this team. Tight end is one of them. We started the show talking about Andrew Rapier, but man, the secondary between safety and corner, there's just so much experience. There's a ton of talent too. I mean, beyond the experience of guys like Aldavian Collins and Zion Tracy, who have played a ton of football, Darius Dixon and Jameer Joseph are just incredible young corners who are going to be really good next year. In that safety, they get the familiarity of Deion Broomfield coming over from Iowa State. They get the boost of Terry Smith, who has done great work in the secondary at Penn State. I think it's a really compelling group. Danton Lynn's going to have an embarrassment of riches and be able to do a lot of things, which I think is a great thing for him. It's a great thing for anybody, but Danton Lynn, especially in his career, has been very multiple with his defenses. He runs a lot of different schemes. When he was at UCLA, he was running a 3-3. When he was at USC, he transitioned to a 4-2-5. He can do a lot of things. He can do a lot of things with this group. Great point. They're a very fascinating position for me. There's just so much that can go there. But what I have to know, I know you talked to him. Did you figure out the story behind Brock from Brock?
Yeah, I did. I asked him, and I staked him out because I knew I wanted to talk to him. And there were some other big names in that group. They brought him out in like half-an-hour waves, and there was a lot of media up there. But I was right there next to him. Also, very interesting guy to talk to. Very for a guy that is imposing, just very articulate, very expansive in his thoughts about the position, how he needs to get better. But I said, look, man, I introduced myself. First question, I said, it could not be a coincidence that your name is Brock and you're from, it's Brock, Texas, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And he goes, actually, it is a coincidence. And he explained the whole thing. And I'm like, I'm not sure I believe you. I don't think your parents are being straight with you, but he says it is a coincidence. But I got a chance to sit down with him, and between what he had to say and what Ryan Clanton said about him, he's fascinating. He said he didn't even play center until he got to college. Was it West Texas State or Texas State? Texas State. Texas State. But he said he was a left tackle in high school. But they moved him to center. And I'm paraphrasing. They moved him to center in college because they were so intrigued. They were so intrigued by his athleticism and how it might translate to the middle of the offensive line. And he said now, I think he played at 285 or 290 last year. He said the Penn State coaches kind of want him at 300 or 305 this year, but he's confident that he can keep that athleticism and still play center at 305. He said he's already there, but I'm just imagining, Penn State's had some pretty good centers, and Nick Dawkins, I thought was solid for 2 years, but even before him, Juice Scruggs, second round pick Hunter Northad, who was a FCS All-Star who eventually made the transition. I think he's at guard now for the Chiefs, but those are NFL draft picks. This guy looks like, he's just getting started, but when you see a center that has the athleticism to play tackle, I think that's pretty intriguing, not only for Ryan Clanton, but also for Mauser as a play caller, because they can do a lot of things with a sharp, intelligent center who's still getting better, but also has those movement skills. So I was very impressed with him, but I am sad to say that according to him, there's not a coincidence between the fact that he is from Brock, Texas, and his first name is Brock, sadly.
Well, so you said he gave you the whole story. You got to give us the story.
He said something about his parents, like they grew up nearby, and they wanted to settle into an area, and they moved to Brock, Texas, but they wasn't big, and they did not. I don't know if they moved to Brock, Texas after he was born,
okay,
or they had him when they were in Brock, Texas, but he was like, no, I'm really sorry, but no, there's no. And I'm like, that's impossible. That's gotta be. No, that's gotta be 100,000 to 1 that happened. Like, Max, you are not from Maxville, Ohio, right? Like it's not. No one does that. So I think once he gets more comfortable, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna circle back to him. I'm gonna say, come on, this is your second chance to explain how in the world your name is Brock and you lived in Brock, Texas. Like, just give it to me. It could even be off the record, and then I'll immediately spill it on the Blue White Breakdown.
Yeah, you could either at the end of this be his favorite.
$1 million to 1.
You could either be his favorite beat writer he'll ever talk to, or his least favorite if you keep pressing him about this. But it's only going to go one or two.
To breathe. But in the transfer portal era, excuse me, you can't wait too long to ask good players questions.
No,
you don't know where they're going to be the following year.
Yeah, that's right. He is such an intriguing player, though. We've seen him twice now. I saw him walking around at the Thon event.
Yeah,
he looks skinny. Yeah. He does. Like he's got some he's got some room to put weight on for sure, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think it's a modified. I don't know if it's a full on mullet or a modified mullet, but sometimes that can be slimming too, because it's like it's vertical. It's not as much horizontal.
Yeah, he's got a great frame for them to build on. He's got great.
Just an interesting guy to talk to. I would almost say soft spoken, and you just never really associate that with I'm used to hearing from Juice Scruggs or Nick Dawkins or Venga Ioane, or Drew Shelton was a little soft spoken too.
He was.
But Nolan Rucci. But usually those guys are pretty outgoing and the voice booms. But he's not quite like that. But I can't wait to see what he looks like when they start playing meaningful football in the Big Ten. And I'll be curious to see what Ryan Clanton has to say about his development as we get closer to the season.
Yeah, great player there. Great story to watch. Keep your eyes on him, fans. The one that I'll add that I thought was just fascinating, I didn't intend on spending more than 5 to 10 minutes with each player because we had so much to get to, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the exact number. I'm actually going to look it up while I'm filibustering.
Was it the wideout from Grambling?
Was that it was not. It was Siale Taupaki, the defensive tackle from UCLA. I spent 23 minutes with him because the guy was just he was fascinating. He's got a great story. His parents are immigrants. They don't speak English. They speak Tongan. His first language was English when he was born in Oakland, California. But he grew up and they taught him to speak Tongan from about 4 or 5 years old. When he calls his parents after games, he speaks in Tongan with them. They've only been to a handful of games because they work a lot. They were a construction worker and a retirement home nurse. He talked about how they showed him a blue-collar attitude, and not to mention the fact that he's also an 8th-year player. Not to rag on him here, but he's still in college. I've been on the beat. This would be my 3rd season on the beat for Penn Live, and he's older than me by a year. So he's 24. I'm 23. I'll be 24 soon, but he's got me beat. And he's a great story. He was a fascinating individual who talked too about like why he even wanted to play in 8th year. He said he owes it to himself. He had he dealt with a broken foot. His right foot he broke twice. The same foot, not fun, especially at defensive tackle position. Everything he said was very well spoken, as you'd expect from a guy who's going into his 8th year of college. But he talked about how he wants to be a leader for these guys, how he plays for his dad, for the work ethic that he showed. He talked about how he wants to have his dad's last name famous on TV. He wants to put his name out there. So I couldn't help but be compelled by everything he said. He's also a big body. He's going to be an important player for them. He is a big dude. I shook his hand afterward, and I don't have tiny hands. I have good sized hands. I got good grip strength. He about broke my hand when he shook it. He was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." That's a heck of a grip. Just very fascinating guy. He was one that stood out from that availability yesterday that I didn't want to finish this podcast without mentioning.
Yeah, and if he's a guy that piques your interest, you're never quite sure when you're going to get a chance to talk to him again. So 8 years in college, that's reminiscent of John Belushi and Animal House, but this is a different reason for him staying in college. It wasn't because he was a party animal. It was that he had injuries. He wanted to get better. He wants to provide. He wants to make his parents proud. So what that mean is, I'm guessing then he's 8 years in college. He's approaching 25 or something like that. That is pretty crazy.
He has to be. Yeah. I mean, he said he's 24 now. We confirmed that he's 24 now.
Old 20. He's got to be an old 24.
He has to be. I would think so. He very mature
He's
guy.
Older than you. He is older than you.
He is. He's got more hair than me, but
that's not that hard, Max. Come on, it's not that hard.
Yeah, that's all right. Self-date. You got to have some fun, right? But very interesting guy. He mentioned like the funniest thing. He didn't start playing football too until he was like 17 years old. He said, and so he's getting scholarships, and his parents, who, like I said, were immigrants. They're like, what does a scholarship mean? What is that? And so he's telling his mom about it. She's like, come on, that can't be real. He said it took like 3 or 4 schools to offer him for them to really understand that he could go to college and have his school paid for to play football. So really fun story. Good kid.
Yeah.
Hopefully he stays healthy this year. He's got a long relationship with Ikaika Malloy, the defensive line coach, coming with him from UCLA. So I think this D-line group on the whole is very, very fascinating because of the different personalities and body types that they've brought in. But he was a lot of fun to talk to.
Yeah, Max, and it's just, I don't know that they'll ever be, considering how this all came together and the reasons that it came together, it had to come together this way. There was no choice. I don't think there'll ever be a more interesting, diverse mix of different from all sides of it, whether it's Iowa State or whether it's the transfer portal from the West Coast or whether it's guys that Penn State came back. But you also got Iowa State's recruiting class. That's, there's some guys from, I would imagine, there's some guys from the freshmen from there, and you got January enrollees. So I don't think there's ever been quite an interesting mix of ages and also different parts of the country come together. And they have to come together so quickly. So I think it's going to be fascinating. And you talked about the defensive line. We're used to at Penn State, usually every year, the defensive line is going to have 2 or 3 hammers that are almost surefire NFL picks the following year. It's just it was a testament to how James recruited and also how quickly they developed. The coaching they got, the coordination that they got. But I think that this defensive line, given how it was put together, it's going to really be about the sum of its parts, because there might be some players break out, and they could be young or they could be guys that are older that had their best years of their lives. But I don't think it's quite like anything we've ever seen when you talk about the defensive line.
It's really impressive defensive line. I mean, the staff is going to have their work cut out for them. They already have. We talked about the different ways that they've helped them come together so quickly. They've had some watch parties for the Super Bowl or what have you. Taupaki said he lives by himself, but there's I also heard that the O-line and D-line, there's kind of an open invite to go bowling just about every weekend for whoever wants to show up. So I mean, it's State College, you got to find your places to do some stuff.
There's only so many places to hang out socially. There really is. Yeah.
And then I think all the guys are fond of the Field Burger and Tap already, which I can't blame them. I do love that
Yeah.
place myself too. But
Max, I gotta ask you. Since you live in State College, I do not. Joe Hermit does not. Johnny McGonigal lives in Philadelphia. I mean, it's a story that needs to write itself. At what point are you going to have the Matt Campbell burger and provide a review for us? I think it would go viral.
So Penn State teased that it's coming out this week, right on Monday.
Okay. I got you.
I'm more than willing and interested.
Probably
in being
expensive too if you're going to write about it.
It's fair. Maybe the company will let me write that one off. But
definitely. You're going to write about it. It's get two.
Yeah. I'm certainly interested. I can say I've been to the field. Obviously, most listeners know I went to Penn State as well. I've been to the field a number of times in my time here, and I never got James Franklin's burger because I'm not going to a burger place and eating a turkey burger. I'm not doing it.
I mean, geez, that's
yeah.
I guess he had his reasons, but I mean, come on. I don't think we have to worry. I think I saw something on social media about Matt Campbell kind of behind the scenes about what he wants on his burger and what he hopes it to be, and it looks like something that the average Penn State football fan, male or female, young or old, would happily try and devour. And I think you are. I've seen you. You know, if it's something you want to eat, you're gonna get after it, and that's a compliment. So I just think it's bound to happen sooner rather than later. And I'm looking forward to any video or pictures, but I'm thoroughly looking forward to your review of the Matt Campbell burger. By the way, there's no pressure on you, because if you don't like it and you say so, there might be hard feelings coming from the Lash building.
There might be. I hope Matt won't hold it against me, but also it's rare that I've met a burger I don't like. Yeah. One of my favorite foods. I don't think it's a compliment that you told me I can dig in on some
No,
food.
That's not what I meant. I just meant like you enjoy the process of a good meal. That's all I meant.
Yeah, I could be a food reviewer for sure. I will, you know, what we've decided here, if and when the Matt Campbell burger comes out, I'm very interested. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'll say my favorite is probably the Big Godowski. It's got a pierogi on it, which is very unique, but it's delicious. Not an ad, but you know, I just felt like putting that out there. And we've lost the plot on this live edition of the Blue Light Breakdown officially,
as we are wont to do.
Yeah. Officially, we have lost the plot, but I think we've been here for 38 minutes. We've had some great talk on the shifting culture at Penn State, some injury updates from Andrew Rapier to Tony Rojos to Rocco Becht, and you know, a couple other fun notes from yesterday's avail, and there will be more to come. So make sure you're subscribed to our show here on YouTube or wherever you listen to the podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to PennLive.com, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for being here.